Hi guys, it's Claire. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while, but I wanted to come on here and do the second episode of my knitting podcast today. It's been a while because I moved across the country and then kind of lost track of all of my knitting and all of my projects and what I wanted to knit and what I wanted to film and stuff. So I didn't mean for there to be such a large gap between my first podcast and this video, but here we are. Now I live on the West Coast. I live in Nevada now, and before I was living in Boston, which is on the East Coast of the US. And the most dangerous thing is now I live really close to this really big yarn store. And so I think you guys will be seeing a couple of acquisitions from there, not in this video, but in the future. Probably gonna be buying a lot of stuff from there. I've already spent a good chunk of money in there already, so it's a dangerous place to be. So today I have 3 finished objects, and then I have 1 work in progress and 1 acquisition. I bought a new set of needles I'm really excited about. So we'll just start with the first finished object, which you guys saw I think in my first podcast. It was basically almost done in my first podcast. I think I had half a sleeve left, but this is the Ingrid sweater by Petite Knit. I knit this in the size small, and it's knit with Drops Daisy and Drops Kid Silk. So I think the Drops Daisy, the color is ice blue, and then the Kid Silk is in the color light steel blue, and makes this really pretty light dusty blue color that you can wear with dark blue jeans if you wanted to, but I really like wearing this with black jeans. I just think it's really pretty, and this is the kind of sweater that really makes an outfit because of all the detail on it. This is a drop shoulder construction, and it was my first time making a drop shoulder pattern. I really liked it. I thought it was really easy to follow. Definitely more ends to weave in than a raglan construction, but I think I like the fit of this better, at least on my body type. So I really enjoyed this, and I consider myself an advanced beginner probably. I haven't been knitting for a super long time. I haven't made that much stuff or tried that many techniques, but this was really easy to follow, as I think all Petite Knit patterns probably are. I think she has a reputation for very detailed patterns, and that's definitely the case with the Ingrid sweater. I think the only slightly confusing part was swatching for it, because you have to swatch in pattern, and that means I think you do have to buy the pattern before you swatch for it. And then the other thing is, these are mock cables. These X's, they're mock cables, they're not real cables, which for if you're a beginner, you haven't done real cables yet, it might be a nice thing to do. They're also just less stressful to do compared to the actual 1x1 cables. So I really like this. I think it came out really pretty. Like the effect, you can't really tell. I don't think that they are mock cables and not real cabling. And I also really like the eyelet details between each section of the pattern. Yeah, and then I think I might have mentioned this in the first knitting podcast, but you do decrease along the sleeve, and so because you're decreasing and you also have this cabled pattern, which of course requires a set amount of stitches, you end up with this really slight I don't know if you guys can see this, like seam almost where you're doing the decreases. And I just wish that instead of doing this cable right here at towards the top of this section, I wish I had just done the knits instead, because then you don't get as obvious of a little split right there. But that's my only qualm about the pattern, I think, is the decrease of the sleeves. I mean, you can figure that part out yourself, and I could have gone back to change it, but I just didn't want to, and it's such a small detail. You probably won't notice it when you're wearing it because it's on the bottom of your sleeve, so I don't think other people will notice either, and I don't care enough about it. It's just a little detail that I thought I would mention. As far as this yarn goes, it is kind of itchy. It's pretty cheap. So this sweater costs probably $50 or $60 for me to make, which in terms of yarn, I think is fairly cheap for a sweater of this size. Drops Daisy, I think, is supposed to be an exact dupe for the Double Sunday by Santa's Garn. I think the Drops Daisy, which is what I use, is supposed to be an exact dupe for Santa's Garn in terms of how it's spun and the yarn weight and that kind of stuff. And I didn't really have an issue with that. I think the itchiness is coming from the mohair in this. I don't know, I can't really wear this up against my neck So because of the itchiness, this is not really a sweater that I would wear just to relax in, unfortunately, because the like size of it is really cozy and I wish I could, but it is kind of itchy and I do have to wear something under it when I wear it. Additionally, it is pilling a little bit. I've worn this a couple of times and I've noticed that it has started to pill, especially under the arms and stuff. And along the side of the body and also a little bit along the neck, and so it's not exactly the most durable yarn. I think the pilling is coming from the mohair, which is kind of interesting because from what I've heard, mohair is supposed to help with the pilling or like have materials not pill as much because it has like the halo around, but I think this mohair in particular just sheds so much and sheds in a way that lets it pill. So I do still think that it's a good budget alternative. It's probably like $2 per skein versus like the more expensive mohairs are like knitting for olive is $7 or $8 a skein, I think. So it's much cheaper, and I bought mine from Wool Warehouse and they were having a sale at the time. I'm still really happy with the result. It's just you do get kind of what you pay for. I think the merino, the drops daisy, I haven't had any issues with it. I also have a headband made out of it and that goes straight against my face without any problems, any itchiness. I haven't noticed it pilling yet either. So it is probably just the mohair. So if you are sensitive to yarn and sensitive to wool and that kind of stuff, then I would avoid the Drops Kid Silk, and maybe you could do something like buy the cheaper merino wool. So like buy the Drops Daisy, but use a more expensive mohair. Or honestly, I think I could have omitted the mohair from this and still hit gauge because it's a very tight knit gauge, and so you can just have a slightly more open garment. I don't think it would have made that much of a difference, to be honest, and if you live in a warmer climate then you probably won't have an issue with it. So yeah, that was the Ingrid sweater by Petite Knit. I do really like this pattern and I would definitely make it again. I'm thinking of making a man's version for my brother because he has asked for a cabled sweater, maybe for this winter, who knows. He is very sensitive to mohair though, or he's sensitive to, or he just has sensitive skin in general, so maybe I won't use this exact yarn combination, but I will maybe knit a version of this for him. I do think she has a man's version of the pattern. I don't know what the difference is. Okay, so the next finished object I have is the Helia sweater by Joanna Ng, and it is this raglan sweater, sorry it's a little wrinkled, with this lovely cabling on the sleeve. It is just so pretty, and I think it is just such a statement to have this cabling on the sleeve. Sorry, it has like a crease down the middle because of how I blocked it. So I'm gonna try to show you. Look at that sleeve. It's just, this cable pattern, I feel like it's just so unique and so pretty. I love how the entire sleeve is like this, but the body is plain because I feel like it really emphasizes the sleeves. This is also knit in a size small, which is the second size in the pattern. It is knit with Drops Baby Merino in the color light gray and Drops Kid Silk in the color Moonshine. This Drops Kid Silk is a little bit softer than the one that I use in the Ingrid sweater, even though they're technically the same yarn, just a different color. And I don't know if it is just the inconsistency in quality from Drops or if it's actually just the dye job that was done to get the different colors that is causing it. I did notice that on this dye lot of Drops Kid Silk, I was getting a lot more like bunches of fluff compared to when I was knitting the Ingrid sweater. I didn't really get that. I had very consistent mohair that I was using. So I think it's a quality difference. I don't really know. So it's probably just gonna be hit or miss with the Drops Kid Silk. I've only worn this a couple of times, probably I think twice, because it got really warm here almost immediately after I finished it, because this is what I was working on when I was moving across the country, and then it kind of just sat on my needles for a while. But yeah, I haven't worn this too much, so I can't comment on the wear yet. The Drops Baby Merino is a superwash yarn. It is a fingering weight yarn. I didn't notice that it grew too much during blocking, which I know is like a thing you have to look out for when you use superwash, but I didn't have a big problem with it. I also feel like the drape of this is really nice. I've been trying to not buy superwash if I'm not buying hand-dyed yarn, just because of the chemical processes that are needed to make superwash yarn. but I didn't look at the label when I was buying this, and I just ended up with superwash yarn. So I have no complaints with it. It's not a super soft yarn by any means. Superwash is typically softer than just straight up merino. I don't know what happened here. It is a little bit rougher. I wouldn't say it's itchy, it's just rougher. But yeah, I mean, I have no complaints. I had no complaints when I was working with it. It was just kind of annoying to splice. That's another reason why I don't really want to use superwash yarn. It's just because I think it's called a Russian join, where you do the you loop the yarn and kind of weave it into itself, which means that you kind of end up with a section of your knit that is has slightly thicker yarn because there's double the yarn there, but it doesn't make too much of a difference in this kind of knit where it's a slightly looser gauge, and so your yarn has, I guess, space to be double the thickness or have varying thickness, and I can't really see where I joined the yarn, so no complaints about that. It's just more annoying, I think, than doing like is it called spit join, where you like use moisture and heat to kind of felt the ends of your yarn together. But anyways, more details about this pattern. You have this folded collar, which is in twisted rib, and then you do the top-down construction, and then the raglan has this twisted rib border as well, and the sleeve is twisted rib in the sections that are not the cabling, and then you go into the cuff, which I really like this detail. The cables, these 1x1 cables, extend into the cuff, and then the rest of it is twisted rib, and I just thought that was really pretty that it extends like that. Here's a better view. I just thought that was really, really pretty. It's not the most defined cuff, but I do really like it, and you do decreases at the very end of your sleeve to come into that cuff. So most of your sleeve you're doing without decreases, and it's only in the like bottom third that you're doing the decreases. It also features a split hem, which is also in the twisted rib, and the back is longer than the front, and it has German short rows. It also suggests to use Jenny's super stretchy bind off for both the hem and for the sleeves, which I had never done before, and she links to a video that shows you how to do it, and so it was really easy to follow. And that's what that looks like if you don't know what the bind off looks like, at least with twisted rib. I don't know if it's my favorite bind off. I think the Italian bind off has a cleaner look. This one kind of has like it kind of looks like a border instead of with the Italian bind off, it looks like it wraps around. I would do it again. I do think I like the Italian bind off more because I actually find the sewn bind offs to be kind of fun to do with the needle, but I think that's just me. I think a lot of people find it kind of confusing, and the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off is also a lot faster to do, so there's that. I really enjoyed making this sweater. The pattern was really clear. This is a charted pattern, by the way. You do start the chart of the cables as soon as you start with the raglan, and I don't know if I would say it was confusing. You just definitely have to use your brain during that part. It's not a mindless knit. The sleeves are not a mindless knit either because you do have the cables, but at the beginning you do have to keep track of how many stitches do I have, which row am I on, and you have to track that fairly closely. If you have a row counter, you'll be fine. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the process of making this pattern. And just a note, I did use traveling loop for the sleeves. Towards the end of the cuff, it got really, really tough to use the traveling loop, but I didn't want to transfer to double pointed needles, so I just kept on with it. So that's just a note. If you don't like using double pointed needles or using magic loop, you can use traveler's loop, but it will just be kind of a tight squeeze at the very end. I don't think it messed with my tension too much though at the end, so it's doable. You just definitely need to have the 4-inch cables, or sorry, the 4-inch needles. I really want to knit more from this designer. I think her designs are really pretty. They have a lot of like statement cable and statement lace pieces where most of the pieces stockinette and a certain section of it is a cable or a lace pattern, which I think is really stunning. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be following this pattern writer, pattern maker, pattern knitwear designer, I guess, in the future. Okay, the next piece is actually not a knit piece. It is a crochet piece, and I made this for a concert that I went to a couple weeks ago, and it is the Stella bralette by Daisy and Dime. This is made using Hobby Rainbow Cotton Yarn, the 8/6 size, and I used 2 skeins of it, and this is the color Powder Rose. It is a sport weight cotton yarn. I don't really know how I feel about it. The working experience when you're crocheting is fine. It does feel a little bit almost waxy on your fingers, which I don't particularly enjoy. It is also kind of splitty, and that might just be because crochet, you're wrapping the yarn in the other direction, but I feel like it wouldn't be particularly pleasant to knit with either. Also, it is labeled as sport weight, but I feel like it seems thicker than sport weight, so I don't really know. It also doesn't look too great after washing. It loses a lot of its definition. I don't think it's my favorite yarn, and I've hand washed this once and I've machine washed this once, and both times like just you start to lose the definition in the yarn itself. And this is an all over shell pattern stitch in the crochet, and so I think the stitch definition is kind of important to have when you have an all over texture like this. But yeah, that's enough about the yarn. It is really cheap yarn. It's like $2.50, and Hobby's always running sales, so, and it's really cheap, so I guess you kind of get what you pay for. This might be a better yarn for like household items or amigurumi, like crochet stuffed animals. I don't know about how I feel about using it for a garment again. I have a lot of this, so you'll probably see it again just because I want to get it out of stash, and the actual making procedure isn't too bad. Yeah, it features these half double crochet ties in the back, so it is a backless top basically. And again, I wore it for a concert, so I was revealing a lot more skin than I probably would normally reveal. I don't know if I would wear this on a daily basis, but it is a really pretty pattern. There is bust shaping in the pattern in the form of these darts that go down the center of each breast and then ends in this lace, and it is a made to measure pattern. So she tells you to measure like a certain part of your body and then make enough stitches to reach that length, which I find is really good if you have a different weight of yarn than she suggests, or if you have really different measurements from most other people, especially because this is a form-fitting garment. So if you have different measurements than the pattern maker, or if it's graded for different proportions, then it's really easy to change that. Well, this obviously isn't graded because it's a made to measure pattern, but I do like that aspect. I feel like it makes it a little bit more inclusive. It also makes the patterns really easy to modify if you want to. So I'm thinking of making this pattern as a longer top with more crosses in the back and maybe extending further into the back. And because of the way the pattern is written, that's going to be really easy for me to modify. And I'm not good at modifying patterns. So if I'm saying that it's going to be easy to modify, it's gonna be easy to modify. At least I really hope so. But yeah, I really like this pattern writer. She makes a lot of these made to measure patterns, and they're always really easy to follow. So I've made I've made 2 of her other patterns already. I really enjoyed the process. So if you also crochet, then she's definitely a pattern writer that I would suggest following if you like your style. And also if you're a beginner crocheter, you've never made a garment before, I think she's also a really good place to start. Especially her newer patterns, I think are really well written and really easy to read, and they're formatted in a really lovely way. So I just really like the experience of making her patterns. And yeah, I forgot how fast crochet is because this only took me like one night and I undid some parts and redid it. So you could definitely make it in like 2 hours, I feel like, if you're faster crocheter than me. But yeah, I really like this pattern. I would make the pattern again. The only reason I would use this yarn again is because I have it in stash and I don't want to waste it. And I don't know what else to do with it. So yeah, usually I link the Ravelry pages down below, but Daisy and Dime is not on Ravelry, so I will link her Instagram below instead. Okay, moving on to my work in progress. This is the Smilla Sleeves by Anne Wenzel, and this is what it looks like so far. I have finished like the body and maybe a third of the sleeve. She looks really curled up right now because obviously she has not been blocked, but I'm really, really excited for this. I saw someone on YouTube make this. I think it was Tangerine Knits, maybe. I saw it in someone's knitting podcast, and as soon as I saw it, I added it to my queue. As soon as I moved here, I went to my local yarn store and I bought yarn for this. So this is on 4.5 millimeter needles, and I used Woolfolk Tinned in the color 18, which is this really pretty like mauvey color. I think the Woolfolk Tinned is a fingering weight yarn, and the pattern calls for a DK weight yarn, I believe, and so I really did not follow the pattern when I was picking the yarn. So my gauge is quite a bit different from hers, but I really like this yarn, I really like this color, and so I really wanted to make it. So I did knit one size up from what I would normally knit based off of my measurements, and this is in the size medium. So I knit the size up because of my gauge being smaller. I used the same size needles as she recommended, and so this fabric is just really airy and drapey, even before I've blocked it, despite of all of this texture going on. And so I think I'm going to end up with a version of the sleeves that is a lot more cropped than the original, and probably closer fitting than the original, which is fine. I think they'll still be really cute. The Smilla sleeves pattern, sorry I didn't mention this earlier, it's kind of a shrug pattern. It's like a cardigan, but the front is just not there. So I think technically it's considered or labeled as a shrug, but you know, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure what category this would be in, but I just thought it was really cute. And I do think I bought too much yarn for this, so I really want to make a matching tank top in this yarn, and I really hope I have enough left over for it, because I think that would be really cute to wear the sleeves over a matching tank top in the same yarn. As far as construction goes, you start from the back and you kind of knit this trapezoid outwards, and then you pick up stitches for the shoulder and the front of the sleeves, and the entire thing is in this I don't think it's considered double knitting, it's like the slip stitch ribbing pattern, and same thing with the sleeves, it's bordered by the slip stitch ribbing. Yeah, I don't know if there's a name for this kind of slip stitch rib. It's just labeled as ribbing in the pattern. And then it's this all over honeycomb texture, which you make doing 1x1 cables, which I've gotten so much practice doing the 1x1 cables. I have to take breaks in between the rows, in the middle of the rows that are the 1x1 cables, because it's just kind of hard on my hands, at least the way I was initially doing it. Now that I've done more of it and practiced more, it's gotten a lot easier. But yeah, it's a lot of 1x1 cabling. But yeah, it's a lot of cabling. She does have a link to a video showing you how to do the 1x1 cabling without a cable needle. I already knew how to cable without a cabling needle, as purely because I stumbled across a video on TikTok. But yeah, I find it really helpful when pattern writers link helpful tutorials like that. I found it a little bit confusing when I was picking up stitches for the shoulders and the front of the cardigan, sleeves, whatever, because it refers to like the left and the right side of the cardigan, but there's no diagram telling you which side is the left and which side is the right. It's kind of just when you first cast it on, it specifies a right and a left of the like stitches that you're doing, and then it doesn't, like, there's no diagram labeling it. And so if you're using your brain, you can figure it out, obviously. But I do wish that there was a diagram showing that. And so that's just a little note that I had. I don't think anyone else that has made this pattern had this problem though, because I looked on the Ravelry page because I was confused and no one else mentioned it. And so it might just be a me thing, being confused about that. There's also a couple of modifications that people have done that are listed on the Ravelry page that I think are really pretty, and so if I like the result of this, I might make another one in like a different color with some modifications made, because I think the like silhouette of this piece is pretty unique. I haven't seen it before and I really like it on other people. As far as this yarn goes, it is a 2-ply yarn. It is 100% wool. I'm not sure if it specifies what kind of wool. It is more delicate, I want to say, than other yarns I have used. I've noticed like there's a lot more like fuzziness, if you guys can see. And so I think that means that when I wear this, it's going to pill pretty quickly, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I don't know because I have not worn this yet. I've just knitted with it. It is a really lovely knitting experience though, I do have to say that. And probably if you hold it with something else, it will be more sturdy, and maybe if I had a tighter gauge it would also be more sturdy, but I don't know because I haven't done that. Yeah, there's also, because it's a 2-ply, I feel like there's also just a lot of internal definition within the yarn, if that makes sense. Yeah, you can really see it in like the double ribbing locations, that definition within the yarn, because it's a 2-ply and not a 4-ply. But yeah, I'm really excited to finish that because I think it'll just be really fun to wear. It'll be really good for the office when it's cold. Yeah, I just feel like it's a really unique piece to have, and I'm excited, and I really love the color of it. The last thing I just wanted to talk about is an acquisition that I made when I first moved here. So these are the ChiaoYu interchangeable needles. It comes in this case. I got the small set. You can also buy the complete set, or you can buy the large set. And it all comes in the same case. And the reason it's split up like that is because the larger needle sizes use a different connector to the cable than the small size. And so when you buy the small size, it comes with the small size cables and the needles that can fit onto that. And so it goes from US size 2 to US size 8, which is 2.75 millimeters to 5 millimeters. And I don't think I really use anything bigger than that usually. So I think if I ever need bigger needles, I just buy them individually and buy the cables individually. And that way it's going to be cheaper than buying the entire set for 1 or 2 needles. I have used the ChiaoYu fixed needles before, particularly for socks. I've used their, I think, 2 millimeter and also their 2.5 millimeter needles. And the thing about ChiaoYu is their cables, the red lace cables, they're metal and then encased in plastic, and so they are memory free, I think is what they say, and they're super flexible, really great for magic loop, really great for traveler's loop, that kind of stuff. And my old set of needles, which were from Knitter's Pride, the cables there were not like that. They were very, very stiff. They were definitely getting kinked in places, and so I just decided to splurge and buy myself the ChiaoYu needles because I prefer metal needles. At least so far I preferred metal needles. Yeah, the Knitter's Pride needles that I had before, they were chipping on the side or on the tips of the needles, and that was snagging on the yarn, which is another reason why I decided to just splurge and buy slightly more expensive needles, because when the needles would chip, I would have to buy replacements. I couldn't even make it through a full project without one of them chipping. And so it was just getting really annoying and kind of expensive and not a great knitting experience. So the ChiaoYu needles, and so far I haven't had any issues with them, and I'm really excited to keep using them. I'm using them in the Smilla sleeves pattern. That's part of the reason why I was so excited to cast this on, because I wanted to use my new needles. But yeah, there's a ton of cat hair on this because my cats have hair. The ChiaoYu needles also come with 3 cables. So I think it's 20 centimeters, 40 centimeters, and 80 centimeters. And then you get the needle locks, and you get this rubber piece which helps you grip the needle itself. Yeah, and you get a couple of other accessories in there, and I just think that they're a really good investment if I wanted to keep knitting more, and I'm just really excited. That is it for today's podcast. Hopefully the next ones will be a little bit more regular. I will leave links to the patterns that I mentioned and also my own Ravelry pages if you want to look at my projects and look at what yarn I use and that kind of stuff. And yeah, leave a comment if you have any questions, and I will see you guys hopefully soon. Thank you so much for watching.